The Hobgoblin is one of Spider-Man's most menacing foes. In the last issue, he has made his return. Who is this Hobgoblin? Is it Ned Leeds? Is it Roderick Kingsley? Is it someone altogether different? Well, in this issue, we actually get to find out. Guys, I'm Mike Spider Slayer. Welcome back to Comic Book Corner 2.0, and this is Spider-Man Weekly, where I cover your favorite webhead, your spectacular one, your amazing one, whatever you want to call him. I'm here to cover it each and every week, and today we're going to be discussing The Amazing Spider-Man issue 12. In Amazing Spider-Man issue 12, we dive deeper on who Hobgoblin actually is, and you might be surprised by the time you get to the end of this issue. Now, I know a lot of you guys out there might not be fans of this run of Amazing Spider-Man, and you dropped off of it because you're not a fan of John Romita Jr.'s artwork, or you were teased in that first issue of something happened to Peter Parker 6 months ago and haven't revisited that story. I understand that. Honestly, to tell you the truth, I will never drop Amazing Spider-Man. Just my favorite character. I read it through the thick and thin. So just letting you guys know, there are spoilers in this issue. So if you have not read your issue and you don't want to get spoiled, hey, I suggest that you read it and then come back and we can discuss it in the comment section below. So let's talk about this book. Yes, we get that classic John Romita Jr. artwork. And let me tell you, his artwork in this issue is not the greatest. Everything seems oversized, right? It's like when you get to see Peter talking with another character, his head seems overly large. It's actually quite comical. And Norman Osborn gets pretty injured based off of what happened in the events of the last issue. And he's lying in a hospital bed and he's got this like swollen eye. And it looks like he's like the Elephant Man, or he's got some deformity or something like that. It's actually quite comical, you know? I feel like John Romita Jr. artwork works when he puts the people in the costumes, right? But even in this issue, they're disproportionate, especially where you get Spider-Man on this glider that I can't stand that he rides around in. And it just takes up the whole panel and it just doesn't work right. So there's just things that are off. But there are a couple of scenes in here where Spider-Man is actually fighting the Hobgoblin, and it actually kind of works. And I'm like, okay, I understand that. And the last page was kind of cool as well. So there's certain things that are all right, and then there's certain things that are just god-awful. And I know a lot of people are not reading this book because of this artwork. Webheads, you want to earn $15 to buy whatever it is that you want? Well, just go ahead and download the Whatnot app today. It doesn't cost anything, and all you got to do is use my super link in the description box below. Once you create a profile and you make your first purchase and you use that super link, you will get $15 off that purchase. It takes a few minutes. Why not capitalize? You could get that comic that you've been waiting for at a pretty good discount. So guys, again, download Whatnot today, and my super link is in the description box below. Get that 15 bucks. So let's dive into the story. I'll give you my overall score at the end on what I thought of this book. So diving into this first issue, or to this issue, what happened in the last story arc is we wound up getting to see Norman Osborn making a deal with Roderick Kingsley, who was once a Hobgoblin, and he basically got rid of all his assets to keep himself out of jail. Well, now Kingsley is back, and he somehow persuaded Norman Osborn to give him all his assets back. And Norman Osborn wants to walk the straight arrow and just wants to do things right, kind of, you know, not get back on the glider, not do something that's going to trigger him to become the Green Goblin once again. So we get to see that interrupted in that last issue where the Hobgoblin busts through and interrupts the deal. There's all kinds of people dead. Norman Osborn is severely injured. Roderick Kingsley actually gets away from everything. And then we get to see the confrontation of Peter and Norman. And Peter's like, Norman, how can I ever trust you when you lied to me? I was supposed to help you make that deal with Kingsley. I was supposed to go with you. And Norman just sits there and says, I thought I could have done it on my own. You know, Peter has definitely some trust issues. And obviously, as the reader, you can understand why. You know, Peter's trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, but every time he does, Norman does something to, take that trust away. So there's definitely some trust issues going on there. Peter now has to talk with Betty Brant and find out, what's going on with Ned Leeds. Is he the Hobgoblin once again? And she kind of confesses that, he's freaking out. He is freaking her out. He comes home dressed one time, like dressed as the Hobgoblin. Then he blames Norman for tainting formula. And then he's like inserting goblins here. So like literally it seems like Ned Leeds is actually going crazy. Okay. As the issue progresses, we get to see Spider-Man on his freaking glider, and he goes and he wants to talk to Ned Leeds, and he's trying to confront him, and he sees the machine. I think it's called like the Winkler, where if you sit in this machine, it's going to like hypnotize him and make him become the Hobgoblin once again. So right away he thinks, oh yeah, this dude is the Hobgoblin for sure, 100%. But that's not the case. When you're reading this book, boom, there's this big explosion, and next thing you see, it's the Hobgoblin. And Ned Leeds is like getting destroyed, or like he goes flying off somewhere. And then you see the battle happen between the characters, and Spider-Man's pissed. He's like, dude, like, who are you? Like, who are you? If Ned Leeds is not Hobgoblin and Kingsley was at the scene, like, who is this particular Hobgoblin? And as the reader, it's definitely had me like, oh my God, like, who is this guy? Like, I don't even know. The funny thing about this book that I really enjoyed, though, is that the book pokes fun at Spider-Man having this glider. Hobgoblin is like, you're on a glider? Is this a joke? Which I thought was actually funny how the book is poking fun at itself. And I agree, Spider-Man should not be on a glider ever. Like, that's the whole point of him having webs, and like, you don't even see him use his webs in this issue. He uses the spider bombs, and he uses the glider, and he doesn't use anything that he basically has always had in the past, because he's relying too much on this technology crap. But you get to see this cool battle. Norman Osborn has his laptop, the nurses bring it to him, and he's looking at the spider suit, and he's like, you know what? I can kind of check in on Peter Parker here because I got GPS in my suit, so I want to see what's going on. And he's watching him battle the Hobgoblin on like a live stream, right? So pretty cool. So as Peter sits there and goes, who are you? He finally unmasks the Hobgoblin, and you find out that it's Kingsley, and you're like, what? He's like, he was at the scene of the crime. So he was like, so who messed up the whole deal that was going on between you and Osborn? And then we wind up seeing that there is two Hobgoblins, and it is also Ned Leeds. So he was influenced by the machine because Kingsley put him in that machine. And now you got double trouble. You got two Hobgoblins doing battle against Spider-Man. So what do I think about this story overall? Well, when it comes to the Amazing Spider-Man just in general, I think it's a fun book. It's entertaining to read, right? I know people have a lot of issues when it comes to the Norman Osborn and Peter Parker team up. Now, I understand that. How can Peter Parker ever team up with Norman Osborn based off of what he did? Peter's trying to be the better person. And Zeb Wells is trying to get that across to the reader that it's not an easy thing for Peter to do. He's highlighted that multiple times. Now, does Zeb Wells need to continue going down that path that Peter has these trust issues, or maybe to convince the reader more? Yeah, maybe so, right? But I do like how Peter is giving Norman the chance. It's something different, something that we haven't seen before, right? So we'll see what happens with that relationship. When it comes to the Hobgoblin stuff, I love now that there's two Hobgoblins doing battle against Spider-Man. And obviously this is all a lead up into the Dark Web, which I think is going to be a pretty fun event. And then after we get through this event, maybe we'll dive into those 6 months that we were teased. But I'm not sitting there going to say, oh, I'm going to drop this book if they don't touch on that 6 months. Just enjoy the ride until you get to that story. I know we'll get to that story. This is a little bit different than the Kindred situation, because Kindred was a villain that was teased from the very first issue, and it seemed like almost every single issue we got to see a panel of him, but he never did anything for about 50 issues of the book. And then we never even knew who he was until the end, and then you got revealed on who it was, and at that point, you didn't even care. right? Right now, they teased it. They're kind of putting it in the back of your head, trying to say, hey, forget that for now. And then we're going to revisit that whole storyline later on. So I'm looking forward to that. But again, when it comes to this issue, it was okay. It wasn't the best Spider-Man book, but I was entertained. And if a book can entertain me, that's fine. That it does its job. And as a Spider-Man fan, I love seeing Spider-Man doing battle against the old villains. And I could care less if he gets the shit beat out of him. I think that's cool because then he has to, you know, he has to endure that pain. He has to come up on top once again, which Peter tends to do. The one thing I don't agree is, yes, do I like the spider glider stuff? No, because you never get to see him use his webs now. Now he's using spider balls and stuff like that. So, you know, eventually that will be dumped. It always is, right? He always has a temporary new suit and then it goes back to normal again. We'll see how long this lasts, but I like how the book did poke fun at the glider stuff. So pretty cool. So overall, at the end of the day, what am I going to give The Amazing Spider-Man issue 12? I think I'm going to give this one 3.5 out of 5. I thought it was just above average and it was entertaining to read. Guys, I want to know in the comments below, what did you think of this issue? What did you think of the reveal when it comes to not one, but 2 Hobgoblins? If you love my content, I'll leave you more content right here to click on. In fact, this is my video series of After the Poll, where I take 5 of some of my most highly anticipated comics and see if they live up to the hype. So until then, guys, keep buying, keep collecting, but most importantly, always read those comics.